Welcome back to Up North at 4 and our How We Got Here series. Today I'm joined by Bill Vankos from the Rhinelander Historical Society. Bill, how are you doing today?
Doing well, thank you.
Well, we're doing our local legend series, and I really can't think of a better example than Eugene Shepard. I don't want to say he's the founder of the Hodag, but he popularized it at least. Well, clear that up for us, Bill. Tell us about Eugene Shepard and the Hodag.
Okay, well, Eugene Simon Shepard was his name, was a very colorful individual. To be honest with you, I think we'd still be talking about him even if the Hodag wasn't in the scenario. He was just that unique of a person. He was born in 1854, and at the age of 12, with a sixth grade education, he went out on his own. His father had passed away, and the phrase he used was, he was thrown upon his own resources. So at that early age, and he wasn't the only one, there's a number of people that were instrumental early on in the Rhinelander history that accomplished an awful lot at a very early age. And Gene Shepard was certainly one of them. So at the age of 12 with a sixth grade education, he's out on his own, started working at farms and advanced up in jobs. He actually piloted a tugboat on the Wolf River before age 16, because when he was 16 is when he really started in his career path, if you will, that being a timber cruiser and a surveyor. So he came up to the Rhinelander area in 1870 when he was 16 years old as an apprentice to an experienced man by the name of Albert Weber. So that was his first exposure to the Northwoods, and he was very impressed with the river, the potential water power, the timber. So he was very impressed with that land. He actually camped out on where John Kern had his trading post, where the Friendly Village is now. So that was his first introduction into this area. He didn't move back here until 1882. And by that time, he was well established and had an excellent reputation as a timber cruiser and a surveyor. Now, a timber cruiser is a person who would go out and calculate the estimated timber on property. And that's how property was valued back then, was by the standing timber. So how things have changed, but back then you were kind of cursed if you had lakes on your property because you couldn't grow trees on those lakes. But they soon recognized the value for tourism. But so he comes back, he establishes his business, which was called the Northwestern Land Agency. And he starts doing business here. And he became a very, very well-respected timber cruiser and a surveyor. It was said that when he testified, or if he had his documents were in court, they were unchallenged, that he had that kind of a reputation. So he was busily doing that. Early on, he actually ran one of the logging camps in the area. And there were about 40 logging camps that were supplying the stumpage to the 8 sawmills that were around Boom Lake. So he did that for 1 year, but that was all. And I never actually read why he only did it 1 year. He was a man that had some pretty deep cycles. He had some highs and he had some lows. I dare say in this day and age, he probably would have been diagnosed as maybe bipolar or something, because he had some super highs. I mean, he had some land sales where he was making $100,000, and then he had some extreme lows in there. So as a person, he may have had some difficulties, but he still accomplished an awful lot in there. So besides doing the timber surveying and stuff, he had a true interest in the betterment of this community. He recognized the short life of the timber industry and realized that we had to do something else to keep this area going, be it tourists, be it people moving in, be it businesses, whatever it took. So as he progressed, he was the perfect man, I guess, if you will, for what laid ahead. Number one, he was that well-respected timber cruiser. He knew the area. He had surveyed thousands of acres of land up here. He personally named in the hundreds. I've read some things up to 200 lakes in the area. just as an example, Lake Mildred, which is to the northwest of Rhinelander, Mildred was his first wife's name. So you can tie a lot of personal things to those. But so here's a man who has a great knowledge of the area. He had a real flair for storytelling. He could keep people mesmerized for a long time. He had a reputation for pulling pranks. And then, like I said, he had that true interest in the betterment of the community. Early on, they formed what was called the Businessmen's Association. And the Brown brothers were the president, but Gene Shepard was the vice president for a number of years. So probably a forerunner to the chamber, but they were out trying to figure out how they could, promote the area. And he was the guy that did that. So one of the things that he promoted was the Hodag. And that wasn't his only prank by a long stretch. One of my favorite stories that he had is he went out in the woods by the resort, and he came back and he announced that he had found some scented moss that had a fragrance to it. And he started to promote that. And there was a woman's group that actually helped package the moss that was being shipped to people that were buying it. Truth be known, he took a bottle of cheap perfume and went out and doused the moss. But that's just the kind of guy that he was. He would just pull pranks all of the time. So as we look at the Hodag, the Hodag story was one of many stories that was shared at these logging camps. For entertainment in the evening, they would be doing storytelling, and they'd be people moving around. And as Shepard did, he moved around to a lot of these different camps as he was out and about doing his timber cruising and his surveying. So that's really where the story got going. But in 1893, so just from a timeline standpoint, the village of Rhinelander was formed in 1882, and it was incorporated as a city in 1894. So 1 year before that, he announced that he had seen the Hodag and actually tried to capture it, but ended up killing it in the process. They circled it and tried to, for whatever reason, use dynamite to subdue it, and it died. So he did write about that article in the paper. And then it was 3 years later when he actually announced that he captured the Hodag. And that was some pretty big news. It was captured north of Rhinelander by Thunder Lake. So anyway, they captured the Hodag. They used chloroform and were able to capture it. And it was good timing, because that year was the first year for the United County Fair. And they wanted to have a fair to help promote the area. And one of the things they wanted to promote was the agricultural aspects of the area, which, with our short growing season and our soil up here, other than potatoes and a few things, it's kind of challenging. But they wanted to promote that, and they didn't have a whole lot that first year to do it. So lo and behold, he had his Hodag at the fair and as an exhibit, and it was very, very popular thing for people to come to the fair and see. So it worked very well for bringing people in. He actually had it in a dark tent and charged 10 cents a head to peek in the tent and kind of see what was going on in there. And 10 cents back then was a fair amount of money. But people were willing to do that. Now, he enlisted the help of his two sons in this adventure, and they would get in the sawdust and they would pull wires and they would rub wood together and make sounds to help portray this. They didn't like it at all. This was not one of their favorite things to do, but as good sons, they were pressed into service. Besides the fair, then he showed the Hodag off in a shed by his house. And at that point, his house was over on Pelham Street, actually next to St. Augustine's Church. It's where the rectory for the church is right now, is where his house was. So people would walk from the train depot on Courtney Street, that couple of blocks over to his house. And he would most times walk with them. And he had some kind of a signal, and I never heard exactly what it was, but it was an animal call or a whistle. It was something. So when his boys heard that, they knew they had to go get into their role. You can only imagine they probably got teased by their friends, that they had to leave if they were playing, or their dad was this guy with this Hodag. But so anyway, they didn't like it, but they did do it. And a number of people came up. Reporters would come up and hear, to investigate this, and it worked perfectly. It got the word out about this area, and it brought people up. And that's what he wanted to do, because he thought if people came up here, they would see how beautiful this area is. They would see the resources that were available, and they would either start a business, they would move up here, they would come up for work, they would vacation, whatever. So that worked perfectly. I mean, he really got the exposure that he was looking for. But it's lived on. I mean, it's the high school mascot. Obviously, it's a city symbol. It's a prized tourist attraction. So it does live on, and he's credited, like I said, with all of the notoriety. He certainly is noted with the story that was that started floating around about the Hodag was just a story. So he's credited with giving it the physical look. He first sketched out what from his recollection what the Hodag looked like the first time when he wasn't able to capture it, and then with the help of a friend, he built a Hodag, and he only built one, and unfortunately it was destroyed in fire up at his resort up in Ballard Lake. So Gene Shepard, I guess in recap, was a colorful individual, very intelligent individual, successful at a lot of things, not successful at some others, made a lot of money, squandered a lot of money, a well-accomplished individual, obviously learned a lot at a very early age, became very, very good at his jobs that he did. And one of those was his promotion. He was a heck of a cheerleader, I guess, if you will, for this area, and very successful in doing it. And one of his accomplishments was the promotion of the Hodag.
Thank you so much, Bill, for chatting with us today about Eugene Shepard and the Hodag. Have a good rest of your day.
Same to you.